My name is Barbara Lee, and I've been here at the National Children's Center in Marshfield, Wisconsin for over 30 years, and have been working in this area of children and agriculture for all of that time. And Marsh has been here at my side for the last how many years?
Almost 8 now.
Almost 8 years. So we have our center. If we click to the next slide, you'll see we are located in central Wisconsin. Just happens to be where our home base, which is Marshall Clinic and the National Farm Medicine Center. So we won't go into a lot of the background, but we will just focus today just on this piece that is most relevant to your work, which is children who are working in agriculture, either as hired employees or working on family farms as well. So if you go ahead, you can take a look at, we use this slide oftentimes just talking about really worldwide. Agriculture is one of the most hazardous industries for adults and definitely for children. In fact, some recent information that we just put out showed that between the ages of 15 and 17, children who are hired to work in agriculture have a fatality rate that's 28 times higher than other industries combined. So it's just inherently dangerous for anybody. But we look at children who are working on farms, but we also look at children who are exposed to hazards on farms starting from infancy as well. So data to share with you. We have the household youth, the injuries by age in the household are the data that talk about kids who live on family farms. And since we got started with this, we launched a national initiative in the United States where the government set aside $5 million a year, not just to our center, but for research and for other surveillance and that. So that was launched in 1997. And for the most part, the rate of non-fatal injuries has declined for all ages overall. And we're really pleased with that. So we still see some trends, and unfortunately now the government no longer collects data, so we don't expect to get any more data after 2014 to share with you. But overall, the rates are declining, and you can just see different things for different age groups. And the area that you're concerned about is the older ages, the 16 to 19-year-olds, where they're doing very meaningful work in agriculture. And then we take a look at the next slide, which is the fatalities of youth working in agriculture. And depending on the type of agriculture, those deaths could be, associated with different things. But by far, in the United States, the majority of deaths to youth working in agriculture are tractors, machinery, and falls from heights, and now more recently some of the suffocations from grain bins. And the other thing that's going on in the United States that's really a big problem for us is the use of what are called skid steers. They're equipment that's smaller, and it's used for many different purposes. And then along with that are the utility vehicles, like the all-terrain vehicles or utility vehicles that are commonly replacing things like horses or big tractors. So we did work, and some of you may know Mary Miller, who was at University of Washington, Seattle, and we worked with a group of employers to develop some voluntary policies so that if an employer is hiring teenagers to work in agriculture, that they could have some standards that they could apply that are above and beyond any of the regulations that we have. So we have just a sample of those, and they are posted online. These were, as I said, developed by the employers themselves with our input and our guidance. And for the most part, in the U.S., the larger employers who are willing and interested in legally hiring teenagers from the age of 14 on up, that they are sincere about wanting to protect these kids and understand, what are the limitations of them. in the United States, the laws, the regulations for kids working in agriculture are very loose and are rarely even known by the employers, and definitely not known for the smaller family farms. So we feel that the voluntary approach is something that is much more accepting to the employers. But I mean, ideally, we'd have regulations that would protect all of these kids. So back in 1999, at our center here, we began the work of looking at what is appropriate and safe for children who are working in agriculture, because on family farms, the regulations do not apply at all. So we wanted to help adults, whether they're parents or supervisors or employers, to understand how do you match the work that needs to be done with the abilities of youth, anybody under the age of 18. So we began the process in 1996, and then in 1999 released these voluntary guidelines for 60 different types of jobs, anything from driving tractors to feeding milk to calves or picking rocks, many different types of tasks that youth do in the U.S. And then you can see from the timeline here that we're very fortunate with government funding from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. We're able to conduct quite a number of studies. I believe there were 18 different independent studies that were conducted over a period of about 12 years, and they ranged, the purpose of the studies, and they were done by different groups around the country. But in the end, probably the one study that we felt was the most compelling was a randomized controlled trial done in upstate New York, where they actually found that on the farms where they had children doing work where there was a guideline that actually applied to it, that the injuries were reduced by half. So this really showed us that if you can get the adults, the parents, to use these guidelines, that they really can be effective. So we were working with these sort of paper and online guidelines for a long time, and over time, things change, and everybody wants all the information available on their smartphone or on their iPad or whatever. And the types of work that youth were doing was changing, and the way the work was getting done was changing as well. So that's where Marcia came in and really took over this whole initiative to take what we had, which was based on many scientific principles, and upgrade these and make them applicable to today's farming environment in agriculture. So it has always been known as NAGCAT up until really last year, when through a group of advisors, including farm parents and youth organizations, Marcia took over, and it's no longer called NAGCAT. So I'm going to let you go ahead and explain things from here.
So when we started the updates on this, as Barb mentioned, the way the jobs that youth are doing are different, the technology is different, and we know more about how to keep youth safe than what we knew back then as well. It became apparent that we needed to have these guidelines updated, so we brought in an advisory team to help us with this. And we knew also that it was important that we had the farm parents there so that we had that buy-in as well. So they were certainly included along with the experts on the updates of these guidelines. So they are voluntary guidelines. There's nothing regulatory about these. They're to be used by supervisors and parents. And the idea behind it is that if we can assign tasks to youth that are consistent with their age and consistent with their ability, that we actually assess that youth's ability to ensure that they're able to do the task, that it's going to help reduce the injuries. And the research tells us that is indeed true. So I have developed these in that format, and they've been put on a mobile-friendly website, and they're available in a variety of different formats. So you can go out and you can interact with them where it just sets you up with a series of questions that you can answer, and then it'll tell you if this job is appropriate for the youth. Or you can just go out onto the website and read the guideline. You can download it if you prefer, or you can print it. And if you choose one of those last two options, to download or to print, it also gives you the ability to be able to customize the guidelines and choose equipment colors or skin tones as well, so you can make them culturally appropriate for whatever environment you happen to be working with. So these guidelines are now available at cultivatesafety.org/family farms, or if you go to cultivatesafety.org and click on the work tab, it will take you here. And you can see that there's guidelines available right now for 35 tasks, and by the end of the year, we're shooting to have them done for over 50. Now, some of these are the traditional ones that we've always had, like hand weeding, hand harvesting, tractor operations, and those types of things, but we're also adding, within the next month to 2 months, we'll be adding things like drones or UAVs. We're adding greenhouses and hoop houses, aquaculture, and some of the newer types of farming and the newer technologies that are being used now. And so it's important, we felt, to get that incorporated into these guidelines as well. This is what the top part of a guideline looks like, and you'll see that this top box, this one happens to be for hand harvesting, it actually talks about what the youth needs to be able to do in order to be able to do the job safely. So when you assess a youth's abilities by using this top box, that'll tell you whether this job is appropriate for that youth to do, whether they can actually physically and cognitively or mentally actually do the job. And so you actually can step through each one of these by every youth that you have hired or that you are working with, if it's a family farm, and determine whether they're a good fit for that job. Once you've gone through this list and you say, yes, this youth can bend safely and knows how to do it, and all the rest of these, then you can go to the next section on the guideline, which talks about what the adult responsibilities are. And so this tells you, whoever is supervising that youth, what that adult needs to be doing in order to be able to protect that youth. Because really, the adults are the ones that have the ability to address the hazards and to assign the tasks, and they really have the control in that environment. It also talks about how much supervision the youth should be provided dependent upon what age they're at. And then the final section on these guidelines actually talks about what the hazards are that the adult needs to talk to the youth about. Hopefully they can mitigate them if they can, or address them if they can, or at least educate the youth on how to deal with these hazards and address these hazards. And it also provides you with a listing of protective strategies. So things that either it's personal protective equipment like gloves that you can provide the youth with to help protect them, or it's strategies like hand washing that you can teach them how to do that will help protect them as well. These guidelines, the previous version, the NAGCAT guidelines, were actually used worldwide. They were translated into multiple languages, including French, Spanish, English, Croatian, and I think a couple of others. And so these guidelines are right now available solely in English, but by the spring we anticipate having them available and translated into Spanish and French. And then hopefully we'll be able to develop more partnerships in the future to translate further so that they can also be used worldwide. So this is the print option on this, and this is where what it looks like when you get to the option where you can either download or print the guidelines. And I threw this in there just so that you can see what it looks like and how you can adjust the skin tone and how you can adjust the equipment color. And once we have these translated into the other languages, you'll also be able to select by language here as well. And I just wanted to make a note that on cultivatesafety.org, in addition to the agricultural youth work guidelines, we also have a menu item called Online Tools that provides you access to a number of other different tools that we have available. And the first one is Ag Injury News that you see on the left there. That particular website actually provides you with information on the types of injuries. It's a news clipping collection that helps you look at the types of injuries that are occurring most commonly in the news, and you can actually search it by injury agents, by age, and by a variety of other factors. So within the next couple of months, they will be releasing a newer version of that, and when the newer version of that comes live, then they're going to start adding international news clippings to it as well. So that will start being even more relevant to those of you outside the United States in the upcoming months. So, but all of these tools, all of this information that we've given you is all available free of charge, and you're welcome to download and use any of this information.
So, and so thanks, Marcia, for that detailed explanation. We have worked with people from, as she mentioned, many different countries in the past, and are open to helping people like modify, adapt this type of material. We have, received funding from a number of different sources, primarily from our federal government, but feel that, our goal for all of us is really to protect any workers in agriculture, and our particular emphasis is on the young people, and anything we can do for anyone around the world to protect young workers in agriculture, we're ready to jump in and help you out.